Hey guys, this is Matt of Zero's Play Heroes, and today we're doing a quick little review on The Division. So you'll hear me talking about The Division every now and then. It may get a little bit of an off comment, maybe a little bit of crankiness towards it. Now, I'll admit I hyped this one up personally myself when it was first revealed. A lot of the information they gave, a lot of the visuals they gave, a lot of the gameplay-esque esque elements they showed in their videos never really came to fruition. And the game has improved, I'll say that much, since its initial release. However, it is still not the game it said it would be. And that was what sold me on it initially, this idea where it's an open area, a little bit more playability, and less of the real game things. Now, obviously, you would have heard ad nauseum about bullet sponge enemies, completely unfulfilling, or at least sub fulfilling content all the way through it, and no real feel of progression or success or completion or even a real point to the story. Now, I'm going to be doing a bit of spoilers in this one, so this is the opportunity. If you haven't played The Division, which is fine, but if you haven't played it by this point, this is spoilers, so whatever works here. And now, okay, so basically, spoilers wise, the game is in regards to a super virus that occurs. It's actually based off of a bit of a military training that was done in America. Actually done, I believe, in Minnesota at one point in regards to what would happen in a situation where a super virus takes out certain area and its hospitals and its infrastructure. Yeah, now look over there. See? Alright, so for the rest of this review, my little son Oliver will be sitting here and helping. No, I've got to keep going. I can't stop. So basically, the Division has a... He's pointing to the television above us. Yeah, it's a TV! It's the TV! It's got Mario on it. That's you! Yeah! Alright, so the Division basically, when it comes down to it, we're talking about you're stuck in a wasteland where you can't actually get away with anything. You're stuck with this wasteland where all the people have either died or have been quarantined out, that type of thing. And you're essentially, the concept is that you're supposed to be the next level of, there's already a first wave that's gone in, and you're the second wave of Splinter Cell style, almost terrorist cell style government agents that go in and try to change what's happening in this area. Now, they use the island of Manhattan for this, which I believe's been recreated rather beautifully. Now, I can't say that I've never actually been to Manhattan. However, it does have a feel of realism, and all the way through some of the content they were showing, the realism came all the way through. Now, essentially speaking, it is a really pretty game. However, a lot of the realism is lost when you look at, say, for example, when you're shooting enemies and you're doing all that type of thing. Now, in regards to the enemies, this is where it's very controversial. Now, whether they thought about this or not at the time is... It's hard to believe they didn't. This is around when this game released. This is around the same time as the Black Lives Matter. Those two young gentlemen who were murdered by police, or at least died at the hands of police. Murder being an operative term there. And that correlated in a larger movement that obviously expanded further on. Now, in this game, you kill people wearing hoods, unidentified people, and the assumption is they're wearing hoods, they're bad guys. And that's a very unfortunate scenario, and it feels very much along those same lines of a bit of insensitivity. Now, the other part you'd think is these people, for the most part, get killed because they're scavenging. Scavenging in a wasteland where there's no support by government whatsoever, no supplies, no rations, no nothing. And as much as you can suspend reality a little bit with gaming, this is based in a real world area, as said before, recreated faithfully to the actual Manhattan Island, has a real people feel to it, and then they really built it on this realism, and then they take that realism away for gameplay elements, and there's no real smart or tactical or strategic elements to the game at all. It's poorly done. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's a terrible cover-based shooter that just has a really beautiful skin on it. And that's quite often why I will compare it to something, say, like EA's Star Wars Battlefront, where it looks beautiful. It sounds quite good. Well, Star Wars Battlefront sounded amazing, but it is really, really shallow. And where Battlefront didn't have a single player, this is a majority single player game with some open PvP areas that just allow for, as MMO players may know, camping essentially. I apologise for the wibbling cam. My son's holding on to this. Now, this is not to say that I'm a bit salty about how the PvP goes. It isn't actually that enjoyable because there's no real extra modes to it. I know that sounds ridiculous. Once again, we're talking about a game that's based in realism. It's really not. Realism, really. However, there is a considerable amount of game elements that are all the way through it. As I stated before, the bullet sponge enemies, the terrible cover options, the lack of any tactical choices or gameplay at all, the super futuristic additional weapons and kind of weird little add-ons that don't actually add that much to the game and pretty much throw out any more realism. And then we're talking about enemies who can take hits to the head and just keep coming. But there's so many extra bits to it that aren't enjoyable. There's a lot more work that would need to be done to make this a good game. A game that's at least either faithful to what it's trying to sell, or going for the more MMO style. And if you want to go MMO, get rid of the realism. If you want to go realism, get rid of some of the gameplay elements or the game choices. For example, bullet sponge enemies. And in the same way, this is the same guys, like it's the same studios, or at least linked studios, who made Ghost Recon Wildlands, which has less tactical than what you would think. However, it's enemies, really, there's only one or two enemies who are a bit bullet sponge-esque. The rest of them, it's more the way that which they play, or it's their tactics, or it's the elements of which they take away a bit of your abilities that makes them more difficult. And that's something the Division should have done from the get-go. There is no real dynamic gameplay between friends, essentially, unless you group up with someone. You're pretty much playing on your own, and you'll see a lot of players in the hubs that are open world hubs instead of this open world game they said it would be. And once again, spoilers, the boss at the end of the initial release was a goddamn helicopter. Really? That's it. The story's terrible, the gameplay is terrible, every bit of it is terrible, except it looks fantastic and has such potential. And if they do another Division and they pretty much just redo what they're doing there and think of it in a different way and add some interesting elements and not just go, oh, New York, because New York's reason, which is a pity because New York should have been the pinnacle of a place they're going to make it. Maybe look at somewhere, I don't know, that has interesting and changing environments as well. Somewhere that has like a forest, I don't know. I think the way that Infamous looked, instead of just having, I don't know, the original Infamous being set in a New York-esque place, the next one being set in a New Orleans-esque place, the next one being set in Seattle, or at least a version of Seattle and Washington State, which adds so many more elements to it, and there is so many more environments you can do than just cityscape. And the idea that it's being quarantined isn't that hard to believe even then. To be honest, I would not recommend the Division to people. It looks great. I own it, but if someone wanted to try it and I could give my game away, I'd give that game away. It is not a game worthwhile buying, even in its longest, furthest iterations. And I'm really positive about games. It looks great, but there's just nothing behind that. And it's, as I will use quite often, it's as shallow, or I guess it's as deep as a puddle. There's just no extra elements to it. I got bored playing through it, and I was a big fan of this game, initially at least. That's pretty much all I'm going to say on the Division. I don't want to waste too much time with it, but I feel as though I should give some context to my normal comments about the Division. Get out there, play better games. There are so many better games that are in that same genre. Ghost Recon Wildlands is probably a better game than what the Division is. If you're looking for a MMO style game, there is several MMO games that are out there that are better than this. Granted, not a lot of them are based anywhere other than a fantasy realm, but if you're looking for MMO, that is at the moment at least, that is the genre that carries that game style, that video game style, or whatever you guess you call it. It carries that MMO RPG better than anyone else. If you want to play with a lot of people, play a competitive shooter. If you want to play a tactical, once again, tactical squad-based game, Ubisoft have made better games in that arc, in that vein. Rainbow Six Siege is a great game for that more tactical, but it's a bit more blast the hell out of things, but there is a tactical element to it. XCOM is a fantastic tactical game and it catches you out all the time. There's a ton of games out there. Do not waste your time on the Division. Thanks heaps. This is Zero's Play Heroes. This is probably one of the more negative things you'll hear from me. I'm usually really positive about games, but please don't waste your money on this game. There are so many better games out there. Once again, Zero's Play Heroes. Have a great day gaming, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers. Bye.